Zoom. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube and on Inside Chassidus. We did it during the quarantine. I was giving all my classes, so I'm continuing it.
So that would be...
This is live right now. People are online now listening to us.
Can that be used for the space of the theater?
Sure, it's going to be used.
Worried.
But she wants to make her own. She wants to make Inside Chassidus Zoom. What is it called? Bais Medrash Noshim Abonis. I'm not linked to Bais Medrash Noshim. This is me. There's a bit of a dual situation here. Ariella is Bais Medrash Noshim. I'm Inside Chassidus. This is Inside Chassidus. Okay, Rabbi say today's Yud Gimmel Tammuz. It's Sunday Yud Gimmel Tammuz. Yes, ma'am. You can see me right now on Facebook. Go look. And of course, Yud Gimmel Tammuz, Yud bais Yud Gimmel Tammuz is the Chag HaGeula of the Rebbe Rayatz, of the Friedricher Rebbe. Was soll man sagen? What should we say? Let's say this, okay? We want Mashiach now, Geitach, B'chol Rega V'Rega. But when it get Yud bais Tammuz, we live in the Chus of Tzadikim. We live in the Chus of Tzadikim. Tzadikim are sent by the Eibusha to this world, and they're real Evdei Elokim. They're servants of Hashem, B'Shleimus, and they lift us. Yeah. Some they lift 100%, some they lift 90%, some they lift 80%, some they lift 70%, some they lift 60%, some they lift 50%, some they lift 40%, some they lift 30%, 20%, 10%, 5%, 1%, but they lift everybody. When you look at the world's not perfect. Tzaddikim are perfect. And they raise up the world a little bit further away, for lack of words, from Gornisht. You know, there's the possibility of nothing. Mamish Gornisht. And since Adam and Chava, before Matan Torah yet, there were tzaddikim who always lived, and of course, since Matan Torah, there's a unique category of tzaddik, a yid, a tzaddik, and you can speak more pratim about this, but that's what tzaddikim do. They lift us all up. They haven us. You know, when you look at the Jewish people, when you look at our history, not only history from 1,000 years ago, history from today, from yesterday. So there's the famous story about two Yidden who went to Varsha, Farah Muhammad. Two Jews went to Warsaw in the 1930s from America. One came back and said to him, "What did you see in Warsaw?" And he says, "Warsaw, it's worse than New York. The things that I saw Yidden being oived and Mechalel, American Jews are not so low like the Varsha Yidden." Another guy came back to America, he visited Varsha, he said, "Varsha, it's a ir meleach hachomim v'seifrim, it's full with shtivlach and full with batei medrash. Day and night, people, balabatim, balamishpocha, davening and learning and serving the Eivish. Flex da kasha, I don't understand." They both went to the same place. They both came back. They both reported the facts, right? What Chassidus says about the Meraglim. The Meraglim didn't lie. The Meraglim said what they saw. But no one asked them for an opinion, you understand? Two people go to Varsha, they come back from Varsha, and they say testimony. Both the testimony are true. Which is the difference? You know, there's a Ma'aseh mit Reb Marash. You know, Reb Marash. Two Chassidim came from Odessa to Lubavitch, to Reb Marash. Odessa was a modern city. Odessa was not Nikolaev, or Odessa was a modern city, with all the tests of a modern city. So zwei Yidden kommen zu gehen zum Rebbe. So one Yid comes into the Rebbe and he says, "What's in Odessa?" So he tells the Rebbe all of the problems that are going on. There's Dardarus and Sneas, and there's Dardarus and Kashus, and Dardarus and Shmiras, Shabbos, Dardarus and Timothy, and the Rebbe gives him a ruble. Another Yid comes into the Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe Marash asks him what's Hetzach in Odessa. So he tells the Rebbe that there's Bati Medrash, and Bati Knesses, and Bati Chinuch, and he tells him all the wonderful things happening in Odessa. And the Rebbe gives him 10 ruble. When he walks out of Yechidus, he meets the first guy, who told the Rebbe Marash the truth. That's the fact of life. So what's the geschehen? The Rebbe hat mich gefragt, was Hetzach in Odessa? So what do you tell him? I told him, you know, the nice Odessa. And the Rebbe gave me 10 rubles. So the first guy runs back into the Rebbe Marash and says, Rebbe, I told you the emes. That guy told you such a, what's the word, pristine, such a whitewashed, such a Yekashet version of Odessa. He got 10 rubles. So the Rebbe says, Ich weiß, was tut sich in Odessa. Ich gewollt aber wissen, in was Odessa du lebst. The Rebbe Marash says, I don't need to know what's going on. I know what's going on. I wanted to know which Odessa you live in. Ich gewollt aber wissen, in was Odessa du lebst. Zwei Yidden gehen in Warschau. You look at the world, what do you see? What are you talking? Yidden are learning Torah, and Yidden are davening, Yidden are becoming frum. Yeah. That's one version. You look at the same world and you can see all kinds of things that you can spin the other way. Alamas vested. What's the emes? The Elam Haza is an erbuvia. It's a mixture, right? For Shet HaYem Yem, it's an erbuvia. It's an entangle, it's a mixture of Tev and Ra. The Toiv is a Nes. The Ra, that's Teva HaElam. The Ra, that's Teva HaElam. The Ra is Teva HaElam. As I said in Kabbalah. This is, according to Kabbalah, a bad world. You're supposed to say it's a garden. Why? But in Kabbalah it says it's a bad world. The good in this world is a nes. Mamish a nes. And the Eibish, the sense tzaddikim, B'choldeir Vadei, Rosh Yalfa Yisrael, that themselves are really borrowed. They're not from this world. They live on a level of emes and elokus and avodas Hashem betachas hashleimus, and they lift everybody else up. Do they make the world perfect? Mashiach will make the world perfect. Mashiach will change us all. Mashiach also. Wir machen die ganze Welt für Bali Tshuva, even Tzaddik. The Friedrich Rebbe was a tzaddik. And his neshama came into this world with a special mission, with a special shlichus. And he was the Rebbe, you know, if you want to speak about him historically, Ani hagever ro oni b'sheva basami. It says in the book of Eicha. Yirmiyah Hanavi wrote Sefer Eicha. The Gemara says Yirmiyah wrote Kinnis. Yirmiyah wrote the Sefer of Eicha, and he says Ani hagever ro oni b'sheva basami. Yeah. Das ist mein Schutz. Ich habe gelebt im Churben mit der Golus, mit der Verschickung, mit der. Yirmiyah Hanavi says I was the Navi. I was the Nasi B'Yisrael who had to see Shever Basami. That's how it works. There's a Shever Basami, the Eibushter breaks Ami, and there's Ani Geveroni. That was the Friedrich Rebbe's Shlichus. What can I tell you? That was the Friedrich Rebbe's Shlichus. He was a Rebbe during one of the darkest periods of the history of the Jewish people, and he had to do what every tzaddik does, to lift Uftzahim. You know, there's a story, I told this to you many times. Simchas Torah Tofresh Ayin Aleph. I'm almost sure. It's a famous story. Folakan describes it. Yud Chitrik describes it. I'm almost sure. Yud Chitrik describes it. Ich habe sicher gesehen in an der Sefer. Maybe Rabbi Paltiel describes it. More than one of the Hasidim who wrote Ma'aseh Bichlach described that Simchas Torah. I think it was Ayin Aleph. To make a long story short, Lubavitch was bursting at the seams. The yeshiva was gigantic. So they were doing it a month. They were making what they called the Grace Zal bigger. It came Yom Tif, Simchas Torah. You have to make Yom Tif. The regular shul, the regular bais Medrash, regular accommodations was not available. It was under repair. So they made the Farbrengen or the Hakofis in the small Zal, the kleiner Zal they called it. That was the old bais Medrash, verstehst? That was the original bais Medrash. The Bacharim, who were the Vad HaMasadeh, they were teenagers. How old were they? Yes. How much memory did they have? They knew Lubavitch from 2 years before, from 3 years before. They didn't know the history of Lubavitch. And they made a terrible, terrible mistake. They arranged the Farbrengen in such a way that the seat of the Rebbe Rashab was in the very spot where the Tahara of the Rebbe Maharash had taken place. The Rebbe Rashab's father. Could you imagine? Simchas Torah, the Rebbe walks into Farbrengen, and where is his seat? In the same spot where his father took place some 28 years ago, if it was Ayin Aleph. I'm almost sure it was Ayin Aleph. So that Farbrengen is historic. Anybody who was there never forgets it. In Torah Shalom, you also have the Rishima. The Rebbe Rashab became incredibly emotional, unbelievably emotional. He took a lot of mashkir. and his guts spilled out of him. He was talking about his father in such a personal way. They were mamish afraid for his health. So they ran and they got his mother. The Rebbe Tzadifke was still alive. She was Mareches Yomim. And they told her that the Rebbe Dezud is Farbrengen, and he's mamish, his neshama is coming out, and they're worried about his health. So she walked into the Farbrengen, the Rebbe Tzadifke. Naturally, if the Rebbe Tzadifke walked into the Farbrengen, the Rebbe Rashab stood up. If the Rebbe Rashab stood up, the whole room stood up. And she walked over to her son, the Rebbe, and she said, "Efshe v'stamachana hefsik." Maybe you'll trust her. It's Simchas Torah. It's not every day. It's Simchas Torah. Maybe you'll make an interruption. So he says, "Why would I make an interruption? I'm sitting with Hasidim." So she says to him in Yiddish, "Dir is nicht gut." Now, dir is nicht gut means you don't feel well. You put yourself too far. You've exerted yourself. Dir is nicht gut. But if you understand Yiddish, contextually it means you don't feel well. Literally it means you have a bad life. Verstehst? Dir is nicht gut. It means you're not doing well. But it can mean you're not doing well, your stomach is hurting you. You're not doing well, the Eibishter gave you a bad hand. So the Rebbe says, mir is nicht gut. Mir is good. Mir is gar gut. Halavai soll Yosef Yitzchak sein as a good. This is what he says. Ayin Aleph. This is 9 years before the Istalkus. He says to his mother, I don't have it good. I have it good. I have it so good. I wish Yosef Yitzchak would have it like this. You understand? The Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe said, the Frierdiker said about the Rebbe Nishmaseiden, as alle wissen, that das was getroffen bais Nissen, is given lalei ite. The Rebbe Rashab passed away early. And we know this about a number of the Rabbeim. And the Rebbe Rashab, when the Bolsheviks, when the communists came into Rostov, it was in the winter of Tafresh Pei, a few months before he passed away. He said, Ich ken mit zeh nit seinen. I can't live with them. The Rebbe Rashab said officially, I can't live with them. And then there's the famous Meister with Purim, that he wrote a tzavah, he had sickness and stalik. The Rebbe Rashab gave his life up early. He didn't want to deal with that Nisra'id, and he left it for his son. The same story, by the way, with the Tzemach Tzedek and the Mittel Rebbe. When the Cantonist Gezeda happened, the Mittel Rebbe said, Ich ken das nicht, I can't do it. He went to his father's tzin in Gadich, and Hadich, and he came out and he said, the Tat hat mir abgesagt from the Rabbanos. My father let me out of the Rabbanos. He passed away and left the headache to the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Frierdiker Rebbe had to carry the Jewish people through one of the worst generations in history. The Rebbe once said to someone in Yechidus, Yud bais Yud was worse. In terms of loss of life. The Rebbe told, a Yid said to the Rebbe in Yechidus, there never was such a loss of Jewish life like was by the Holocaust. And the Rebbe told him, Yud bais Yud was worse. But there are a number of Gedolei Yisrael who were given this dish, this avoida, you understand? I'm good, Mike. I got the back. Yirmiyah Hanavi, and of course the Yechida ben Zakkai, and the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe gedacht trocken kashi saving us a yenik, such a generation. And like the Rebbe says in the Sichos, during his Nesias, he had to reinvent himself 3 times. When he became a Rebbe in Tafresh Pei. So his father left him at Tzavor. The Rebbe Rashab left him at Tzavor. And although we didn't see the whole Tzavor, we saw one page. One page was publicized then, right after the Rebbe Rashab was Nasal. The Frierdiker Rebbe said the whole Tzavor, he's not showing the Anash, but what's negate to the Anash, he's showing them. And in that page it says that the Rebbe Rashab told the Frierdiker Rebbe what he wants from him. And basically he told him, you do what I did. B'mechazik is a mesa the Kaddish Teim Chetmimim. After World War I, which ended in Ein Ches, 1918, 1917 in Russia maybe, there was a resurgence amongst Anash, amongst marrieds, all over Russia, to mechazik the Menhagim Chasidim, of learning Likutei Torah, and having Chassidus, Chazan Chassidus, Shal Shudis, and having Malava Malkus in the homes of the Chasidim. There was a big resurgence amongst Lubavitchers all over Russia to re-strengthen the Menhagi Chasidim, and the Rebbe Rashab was very involved with this. And that also includes in the Tzavah. So the Frierdiker becomes a Rebbe, and he has a very simple mission statement. Do what your father did, more or less. Then a year passes, 2 years pass, And the Frierdiker Rebbe starts to hear from all over the length and breadth of Russia about the closing of shuls and the closing of chadorim and the closing of mikvois and the displacement of rabbonim. And what happened was all the G'deilim ran away from Russia. The Chafetz Chaim left Russia, Reb Chaim Brisker left Russia. All the great yeshivas out in Rusland, they all ran into Poland. I read someplace, I think I read it, that the Chafetz Chaim said years later, when he saw what the Frierdiker Rebbe did, that if I would know it's possible to be a Yid in Russia, no, the Chafetz Chaim was ready for Mesiras Nefesh. He says, I wouldn't leave. But everybody left. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I don't know what's going on. It's like an exodus. All the people who are supposed to be concerned with the perpetuation of Yiddishkeit are leaving Yidden behind and going off to other countries. And there's a vacuum. So the Rebbe says, I had to put aside what my father told me in his tzavah, and I had to do the work that should not be done by a person like me. It should be done by the local Rav. It doesn't require a Rebbe. And that became his first reinvention. He had to become a Rebbe of Mesiras Nefesh. That the Frierdiker Rebbe should raise himself to a Madrega of Mesiras Nefesh. He probably breathed Mesiras Nefesh in every breath. But he raised a whole generation of Tmimim. The army that he created during the lifetime of the Rebbe Nishmas Eden now became his soldiers for the war of Mesiras Nefesh in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe. You know, we don't even know how many of the Hasidim, the Tmimim, were Mesiras Nefesh and the Mesiras Nefesh. You know, some names are very famous. You know, everyone heard of Chonya Maroza. But there are names of Tmimim that you never heard, who were Mesiras Nefesh for Yiddishkeit, based on instructions that they got from their Rebbe, with such reckless abandon, with such disregard for themselves. There's a Yid, his name was Leivik Slavin. Who heard of Leivik Slavin? Ibn Shikohofni had a son named Avraham Slavin, and he wrote the biography of his father, and I read it. If he would not have written that book, I would never knew this man existed. The way he's killed al Kiddush Hashem, that's how the story ends with all of them. But the way he was Mesiras Nefesh, the way he didn't think about himself, was so, it was reckless, it was wild, it was toyudik. This is what the Frierdiker Rebbe did himself. When at Gemon Bachsidim, I always say this, I think this is true. Now somebody may come along and tell me that I'm saying shtus. But this is what I've been saying for the last few years. When the Frierdiker Rebbe walked out of the Shpalerka prison alive, the person who was most surprised was the Frierdiker Rebbe. He didn't have an exit strategy. He wasn't thinking about an exit. So it's like, you want Mesiras Nefesh, it's Mesiras Nefesh. And there's a famous quote, it's an Igros Kodesh. Frierdiker Rebbe himself writes the quote. Sipruli, the Rebbe says, Purim, Tafresh Pezayin. The Rebbe took a lot of mashkir. He says, they told me, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, that I tore open my shirt and I pointed at my bare chest and I said, as if it's in der Guf brennen, sollte nicht aufhören lernen mit Tashbar. You see this body burning. Pointed at his own Guf. You shouldn't stop teaching the children. This was the story, yeah? This was one Rebbe. Then the Rebbe left Russia. Now you can start asking, why did he leave? He wasn't worried about his life. Why did he leave? So there's different terutzim. The teretz which makes the most sense to me is because after the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from prison, he became an obstacle to the continuation of the work. Because he was a center. And anybody who came next to the center was immediately prosecuted. They wouldn't touch him. And it had to become what they call in the world of terrorism, those cells, you understand? Small pockets of Baalei Mesiras Nefesh, they don't even know about each other. You know, if you speak to Lubavitcher Hasidim from Russia, they'll tell you the official policy was that information that you didn't need, you didn't want. Hilke Zaltzman, they say, I have a neighbor, I call him Hilke Zaltzman, Harav Hillel Zaltzman, he's my father's age. So stark. He came out of Russia in the 70s. He didn't get out with the rest of the Anash. He stayed 25 more years in Russia. And he tells stories about meetings. So we had a shwager whose name was Eli Mishalovin. Eli Mishalovin had a terrible heart condition. He died very young. He never got out. He came out of Russia. He came out of Russia to Nachas HaChabad, but he never got to the Rebbe. Mishalovin from the Svaros was his brother. He has a son in California, Yosef Yitzchak Mishalovin. He has a son who lives in Minnesota, bad kid. This is his children. Ella Mishalovin. His daughter is the wife of Rabbi Glukowski. So he'll tell me like this. He said, they would meet in his bedroom, the Lingen bed. And he would look around, And he would say, "Ihr darf das hören." He would say to the Chaver, "You need to hear this, because you don't need to hear this, go out." He says, "Mir, mit mir geben main clap that mir weglegen." He says, "They're going to be one zetz, I'm going to be finished. They're not going to get information out of me because they won't be alive." He says, "But if you don't need this information," I heard this from him. This nicht mich gehört direct from him. I heard this direct. If you don't need this information, you don't want to be here. Go out. And you didn't want to know. You didn't want to know what was going on unless it was negated to you and Laskonas B'Peil Mamish, because you were playing with your life. In the 60s and 70s, after Stalin died, it was really more pachad than sakona. There was more fear than danger. But in the 30s, and in the 40s, and in the late 20s, you were playing with your life, kipshutim. You mamish playing dice with your life. And your mishpocha, and everything else. And the Rebbe tas moider give us. So the Frierdiker Rebbe had to leave. He had to leave again. The way I understand that he had to leave, there's different pshatim. But the way I understand, he had to leave because he became an obstacle to the continuation of the work. Then he leaves Russia and he starts to travel. Frierdiker Rebbe traveled a lot. From the early 30s until he started to show the signs of the paralysis, he traveled all over the place. He was in Eastern Europe and he was in Western Europe. He visited many places. He was in Israel, he was in America. We all know this. And his stationery the official stationery reads, Ksev's money. Temporary address. For 6 years he had temporary address. The Rebbe was not decided where he wanted to settle. And part of the reasons he traveled was pushing to decide where he was going to settle. And if you understand that the B'Pnimis Hanyanim, where the Rebbe was going to settle, was going to define what the Rebbe's asik is going to be, what he's going to be busy with. And he finally settled on Poland. And when he came to Poland, that was already his yashus. He had a permanent address, first in Varsha, then later in Atvoz. And during that period, the Polish years, the few years he was in Poland, that was taka a little bit like his father had written at Zavo what his inyan is. He had Temchet Tmimim, and there was Chassidus, and the Bochim Mr. Kam for Chazorah. There was a lot of Avodah Pnimis. The Frierdiker Rebbe was involved with Talmidim who served Hashem on a very high madrege. Ich meine, it's not gerecht. Temchet Tmimim, the way Temchet Tmimim is in the Barish. It's not like he forgot all of his other obligations, but this was where he was. Then he came to New York. I'm going to give you a Hagdoma. In 1929, the Rebbe visited New York. To call the Frierdiker Rebbe a Chevreman is a misuse of the word. Yisrael Jacobson, who was a big Asken, writes in his biography, the Frierdiker Rebbe's fanem, the Frierdiker Rebbe's perspective on Askanis was so gigantic. His head was so big, his imagination was so great, and his courage was so vast. His whole approach to everything was big. Came to America, and the Chassidim made an accommodation. Where should the Rebbe stay? In Rabbi Simpson's house. Rabbi Simpson had a brand new brick house, which doubled as his shul in Borough Park. That brick house burnt to the ground. There's no zecher of it. If you ever saw the video, the Rebbe comes off the boat, and he's standing on a porch, and he's waving to the Anash, and you could see that there's pouring rain. I don't know if you've ever seen the video. It's very, very famous. When the Frierdiker Rebbe came here the first time in Borough Park, you see tons of umbrellas, and the Rebbe standing on a porch, and he's waving to the Olam. The Rebbe was here a few days, and he turns to his Gabbai and says, "My Hasidim have brains like this big. Rent us a house in Crown Heights. Henry Street, I think it's called." And within weeks of coming to America, he moved out of the accommodations that people prepared for him, and he began to do it himself. Why? Because if he came to America, he was going to conquer America. He wasn't going to be stuck in Borough Park. And he took an apartment, rented a house, and there was a big courtyard where he built a sukkah. Simchas sukkah Tofresh Tzadik. There was a big oilam bam Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe Poshet said, "My Hasidim taking off kaporis." I'm not saying that any of us will do any better, but that's what happened. He rented a house in Crown Heights. That was the place to be. That was the center of the world, as far as New York was concerned. He rented a house, and that's where he was for the year. He traveled a lot, but when he came back, he stayed in this house on Henry Street, 143. I don't know the address, but Mason, everybody knows about this. I have no idea where Henry Street is. Oh, so it's not in Brooklyn, it's Manhattan. Good. Okay, I'm almost positive it's Henry Street. Okay, so it's not Brooklyn. I made a mistake. I'm almost positive that it's Henry Street. People told me that they went to look at the house. Okay, so I stand corrected. I said Crown Heights, it was Manhattan. Okay, I'm going to look it up now that this because someone told me Crown Heights, but Henry Street's in Manhattan. It's Manhattan. It can't be Crown Heights in Manhattan. And he did his thing on his way. When he came here the second time, by this point he couldn't. When the people saw him walk off the boat, they didn't recognize him. The Pasha didn't recognize him. He had changed, had aged so much in those 10 years. The Pasha could not see that it was the same person. He came off in a wheelchair. People cried. Pasha. People who had seen the Rebbe 10 years before, and all they wanted to do was make it easy for him. So they took him to Lakewood, which is an hour outside of Manhattan. And they wanted to have Maruyik and Lebanon. And Lakewood would have been also a very urban, very suburban, not urban at all. And there'll be trees and there'll be, pathways of dirt. And people will travel up to Lakewood to see the Rebbe. And it'll be still and Ruyik. And the Rebbe said, Crown Heights. Why? Because as the Frierdiker Rebbe describes in the Sikha from Tashem Vav Tashem Zayin, where the Rebbe says, imagine you're a Yid of 60 years old, you're broken body and spirit, and you have to start your life over like a child. As if you're a klein kind. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe describes himself. What it meant coming to America. And of course the Rebbe, our Rebbe, when he would talk about this, would talk about the 3 decades. It's not exactly 3 decades, but that's how the Rebbe would phrase it. The first decade, and the second decade, and the third decade, each one had its nisyonis, had his hardships. And how the Rebbe the Shver reinvented himself. The Rebbe says, the Frierdiker Rebbe reinvented himself each brand new from the Snai. And each world that he came into, he was matzliach with 100%. A Rebbe. And of course, the Moyed that celebrates his life. I mean, Yud bais Tammuz happened 7 years into his Nesias. But Yud bais Tammuz defines the whole life of the Frierdiker Rebbe is the Chag HaGeula Yud bais Yud Gimmel Tammuz. So we're celebrating the Geula. But we're celebrating the Rebbe. I mean, it's not a guzma to say that if not for the Frierdiker Rebbe, not any one of us would be in this room replenished. It's possible that some of us would never have been born. Mamish, Kipshutay, our neshamas would never have come from Gan Eden into this world if not for the Frierdiker Rebbe. And we certainly would not be in the Maimad Matzav that we are if there hadn't been a Yud bais Tammuz. The Mesiras Nefesh of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the koiches that he gave to us, to Yidden, to every Jew in the world, to all of Anash, to all of Hasidim, whether they lived in Russia, they lived in other places, is a perpetual one. It's a continuing one. And this is the Yom Tiv, this is the Moyed, this is the Chag of Yud bais Yud Gimmel Tammuz. We're celebrating with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we're celebrating the Gula of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe's Gula came from the Eibishter. It's Padav Yishalom Nashim Mekrovli Kivrabim Hayu Imadi. This Gula came from the Eibishter. It didn't come from the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe was not helping himself. La Hashem HaYeshua. You understand? The Eibishter did himself a favor. La Hashem HaYeshua. He saved the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe should do what he needed to do. I always tell people, I told yesterday in Shul to the Chavre, the day before the Rebbe left Russia, he says, I want you to tell everybody that nobody should think I'm leaving Russia because of fear or because of threats. Which is same thing, which is Heipach HaSeichel L'Gamid, the Frierdiker Rebbe says. Makes no sense. I am leaving Russia, and he says these words, Seder Mesuder Yesh Kan. There's a plan. The day before he left Russia, in Pei Zayin, that we're going to Peichas, Seder Mesuder, there's something happening over here, there's a big plan. And of course that plan was to come here to America, and when the European world was destroyed, to make America into a Mokum Teira. And Mishom Eida Yeti from Chatzi Kader Atachten, you all know the language. The Lichtigkeit goes forth to the whole world, including to Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, Kipshutei Mamish. This is what we're celebrating on Yud bais Tammuz. And of course it's not coincidental that it's also his birthday. The Frierdiker Rebbe was born in Tafresh Mem 140 years ago. Today was the birthday of the Rebbe Rayatz. Yesterday, Shabbos, Yud bais Tammuz, was the birthday of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And we all know the Sipur, which is in Hayom Yom, that the Rebbe Rayatz said that in the Birchas HaPredet Zeit, which means in the weeks and the months and the days leading up to my father's Histalkus, the Frierdiker Rebbe says a whole winter my father was telling me goodbye and I didn't hear. A whole winter the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, my father was saying goodbye to me and I wasn't Mason Lev, I didn't understand. That Chof Cheshvan, Chof Reish Pei, 1919, 1920, the last Chof Cheshen of the Rebbe Rashab Ba'achaim Chayos Le'Bal Ma'adein. So the Rebbe Rashab said Chassidus for me in private, as was the custom by all the Rebbeim. Then when the Yom HaLedus was not Shabbos, they said Chassidus Ba'atzneya. And when he finished saying Chassidus, he said to me, Ich gebe dir a bracha, du sollst sagen Chassidus of dein Yom HaLedus. I give you a bracha that you should say Chassidus on your birthday. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said right away, Bitnaya da soll sein bechesed u'berachim. I'm making a condition. That it has to be bechesed u'berachim, kindness and mercy. And it's very important to know what that means. The meaning of the words bechesed u'berachim are that the Rebbe should not see bad in Chassidim. That's what chesed u'berachim doesn't mean chesed u'berachim for the Meibishtim. I don't think the Frierdiker Rebbe's Nesiyas was exactly chesed and rachmim. It was nisyonis. When the Rebbe says that I'm not going to see bad in the Chassidim. And when our Rebbe became Rebbe Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Aleph, you can see it's in the Sikhe, which is in the Siche's Chalibais and Yisofis, it's Mugger. At the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe said, our Rebbe said that the Rebbe the Shver, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when his father spoke about the Indian of Nesiyas, hat genommen at Nai Bam Tat, as soll sein bechest u'berachmim. The Rebbe R said, the Rebbe soll gesund sein, said at the end of the Farbrengen, please look it up, Gleut mir nicht auf dem Wort. Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Aleph. The Frierdiker Rebbe made a condition with his father that it has to be bechest u'berachmim, and the Rebbe said without saying it explicitly, and I'm making the same condition, that the Tnai of the Nesiyas, I'm only seeing good, I'm not seeing not good. This is the Frierdiker, the Rebbe, I heard what the Rebbe told Beryl Yunik, it's a nes. Als ich habe sich untergenommen zu sehen, nur gut wegen Mensch. The Rebbe said, it's a nes, I undertook to see only good about people. I shouldn't laugh, I should cry, but I mean, that's the Mitzvah Yisad. So this is what happened. The Rebbe Rashab told the Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe will help. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said to his father, and then the Hayom finishes, it took 7 years. 7 years later, Yud Tammuz Tafresh Peizayin, 7 years after the Frierdiker Rebbe became a Rebbe, was the Chag Agul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and of course he said Chassidus, and from then point on, saying Chassidus on the Frierdiker Rebbe's birthday was not, it didn't have to be Shabbos, and it didn't have to be a secret, because it was the Chag Agul of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So this is what we are celebrating today, Yud bais Tammuz, Yud bais Yud Gimmel Tammuz. Verstehst? The ganze jüdische Volk hat gestiert Lied der Tzadikim. So Friday, I spoke about this a little bit. Friday I gave a Maimon class. And by the way, in the second hour, I'm going to be finishing the Maimon that I started on Friday. Today, everything is not normal. We're not doing Tanya, we're not doing Aimim. So I mentioned to you that I remembered a Maimon from the Rebbe for the number 93. This year is 93 years since the Frierdiker Rebbe's Geula. So I spoke from memory, and I made a couple of mistakes. So I went home and I found it. This was a duch that the David Raskin had written to the Rebbe in Tov Shin Nun Aleph for the Yom HaLedus of Temchat Mimim. But that year it wasn't 93 years of Temchat Mimim, it was 94 years of Temchat Mimim. I remember that it was Nun Aleph, and then I thought for a moment that the years don't stim. Says, okay, it must have been Tov Shin Nun. After class I went home, I actually edited my class that I put up on Friday, I fixed it. And I took out the sefer. There's a sefer called that identifies. There's a Yuman. You can buy. You could have bought then a Yuman, a journal of the entire year. And I found it. I'm reading to you inside. This is Reb David Raskin wrote to the Rebbe that he made a Farbrengen in honor of 94 years of Temchat Mimim. So I'm reading Lashon Harav. Nisbayer v'tach. Niskabel, I received it, and thank you. I'll call upon him at least al hakitze hachi nimratz. Of what you wrote to me very short. In other words, Rebbe says to Reb David, you were not meirech in your duch. That even though you wrote short, you're going to do long. That action is more important than thought. In other words, you wrote bekitzer, but the maise should be bariches, and then the Rebbe adds in with underlined v'chulu. Then the Rebbe continues, Ula yesh leima. Perhaps you could say, Tzadik Gimmel. Kalim, Hoyum, Metzim, Beis Hamikdash, B'chol Yom Kibbutz Mishnah. Every day they would take out 93 Kalim in the Beis Hamikdash. V'yachad im haKayin areze Tzadik Dalet. Along with the Kohen who's using the Kalim, this is 94, and the Rebbe finishes Asker Alatzim. This is Sad. The Rebbe says, Ula Yeshlema. So Friday I spoke from memory. Why would I remember something that I saw on a wall downstairs, right below us, hanging on the wall, 29 years ago? The reason I remember it because I didn't understand it. I remember reading it and saying, "Wow, nicht verstanden." So it's been playing around in my head all these years. What does it mean? Tzad Gimmel Kalim. I forgot about the Kohen. I just remember Tzad Gimmel. So Friday, I came to teach a minor. You know how it is. You walk in and you say Hezechaim. Tomorrow is Yud bais Tammuz. You're not going to say anything. It wasn't like I prepared it, So I had to say something Yud bais Tammuz. No, I had to say Yud bais Tammuz. So this came out of my head. That the Rebbe wrote in Tov Shin Nun Aleph 29 years ago, a remes for this year's 93 years Yud bais Tammuz. And the Rebbe added, then it was really 94, together with the Kohen. So I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this a little bit. Even inside the Gimmel, Kalim Hayotzim bebeis Hamikdash b'chol yom, and together with the Kohen, you have 94. And of course, the Pshat is Poshet. The minute 93 years are complete, the 94th year starts, right? Yud bais Tammuz, Tov Shin Pei, is the first day of the 94th year since the Chag HaGeula. Because the Rebbe was released from prison, Yud bais Yud Gimmel Tammuz Pei Zayin. So the end of that year would be Yud Aleph Tammuz. Yud bais Tammuz, right? That's why you have Bar Mitzvah on your birthday. And it's called Yud Gimmel Shana V'Yom Echad. The day you become Bar Mitzvah is not on the day you have 13 years. 13 years. It's the day that you begin your 14th year. Yud Gimmel Shana V'Yom Echad. That's how it works. Your birthday is already the beginning of the 14th year. So we're holding really a 94th year since Yud bais Tammuz, with the beginning of the year. So I want to talk about this idea of Tzad Gimmel Kalim Hayotzim bebeis b'chol yom v'yachad im hakohen. Okay, what I told the ladies on Friday, and I'll repeat this briefly, is that in Chassidus you have a neir, you have a candle. It's mentioned in Tanya. And the candle consists of a keli, a vessel, and a wick, a psila, which in Tanya is the guf, and shemen, fuel. And in Tanya, the shemen is maisim tevim, is mitzvahs. And then there's the fire. A yid prepares the candle. He prepares the cup. He's the wick. The guf of a yid is the psil. The maisim tevim are the mitzvahs. And the fire is the shechina, the shari al reisha. The fire is the shechina that rests on the head of a yid. Like it says in Tanya Barichas in a number of places. That when a yid serves the Eibishter through Teireh mitzvahs, as opposed to through his own personal innovation, there's a bittel. And that bittel is a keli for the hashras, hashchina. So the asiyas hakli, we make the vessel. The fire, the Eibishter provides. So the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya Perek Lamed Hey, that Shlomo Malka Tzovach v'shemen al reish chalayachse. King Solomon, Shlomo Melech screams, make sure you have enough shemen. What is the tight shemen? This is a zoya. What is the tight shemen? Shemen is maisim tevim. Al reishcha means because of the shechina, the shari al reisha, when a person does mitzvahs. So there's a klal about mitzvahs. There's a rule about mitzvahs. Every time you do a mitzvah, we learned it on Friday, there's an inyan of Mesiras Nefesh. Every time you do a mitzvah, Mesiras Nefesh. Why? Because you're not doing what you want. You're doing what the Eibishter wants. Even if you understand it, and even if it makes sense to you, and even if it feels good, the bottom line is, everybody likes his guf more than he likes a mitzvah. And why did he do a mitzvah? Save, kol, save. This is Tanya Perek Malv at the end. Because the Eibishter said. So a mitzvah is bittul. A mitzvah is Mesiras Nefesh. It says in Tanya. And that Mesiras Nefesh, and that bittul is a keli for oyer. So when you have over here, everybody brings Tzad Gimmel Kalim. Now the number 93, I don't know. You can start, you want to make up Kabbalah, I give you permission. The good news about Kabbalah is that whatever you say you can get away with because no one knows what you're talking about anyway. You can talk about other wills. With gematriyos, people make up stuff in Kabbalah like it's a mitzvah. I don't have a chush in that. It doesn't work for me. It has to say. So the number tzaddikim I know, but Kalim I understand. Kalim. Every day they did avoid in the bais Hamikdash. Shabbos and Yom Tif, that special avoid in the bais Hamikdash. Yom Kippur, that even more special avoid in the bais Hamikdash. But every day they had what was called Tmidin Kisidra. On an ordinary day, the minimum number of kalim they used in the bais Hamikdash was 93. And the Mishnah says every day, not Shabbos, not Yom Tif, not Sukkot, Not Yom Kippur. Every day they took out 93 kelim. That's how many kelim they needed to do all the different avodas that were again in karbonas tzibur. We're not talking about the fact that private people came to bring karbonas in addition. We're talking about the inyonim of the avodah that was done every day of the Beis Hamikdash on behalf of the whole of Klal Yisrael, from the Machzah Shekel, from the Tumas Halishka. 93. So the Rebbe says there's a relationship between the number 93 and Inyan HaKeli. That's the word. There's a connection between 93 and Inyan HaKeli. And in this case, it's not 93, it's 93 years. Tzaddik Gimmel Tammuz, you have 93 years since Yud bais Tammuz. We're now in the beginning of the 94th year. 93 years, you make a Keli. What comes after the 93 years, you make a Keli? Shchinta de Shal Ya'aresh. The fire. The 94th year represents the fire. But the Rebbe doesn't say that the 94th year is the fire. The Rebbe says that the 94th year is the Kohen. Right? Right? I can't see without my glasses, yeah? Okay, yeah. The 94th is the Kohen. So there's two ways to look at it. One way of looking at it is, the Kohen is also a Keli. The Kohen is a Keli. He's serving Hashem. Right? Like it says in Tanya that the goof of the person is a psil, is a wick. So you have 93 Kelim and they have 94th Kli. The Kohen who's using the other 93 Kelim to serve their Eibishter is, so to speak, the 94th Keli. That's one way of looking at it. But there's another way to look at it. There's another way to look at it. Uba Hagdom, I'm going to give you a Hagdom. And I'm going to use my own words, but this, of course, I'm not making it up. It's going to sound good, because it says in Hasidus, so you'll know, I always tell the students, if it sounds good, I didn't make it up. Yeah? In Hasidus, it says explicitly or implicitly that there's two taichin to the word korban. The first type of the word korban is to sacrifice, to burn up, farbrengen, destroy, kiloyim. The second type of the word korban is from the word kiruv, to bring close. They're very different. Sacrificing and bringing close are not the same situation, right? All of us would agree we'd love to be close to the Eibishter. Sacrificing ourselves for the Eibishter, if it's what's necessary, it's necessary, but no one's looking to get into small places, to narrow holes, yeah? So what's the pshat? The pshat is each one of us is carrying around an animal and a person. And the animal and the person are entangled. They're mixed. Every mitzvah you do, the Nefesh HaBahamis is the shutif. Every Rachmon L'Fanaveri you do, it says in Tanya, Perek of Dalet, V'gam B'shas Achet, Hoysa B'omne Ide Yizborech. The Neshama Rachmon L'Tzlan is involved, B'derech Makiv and Aveda as well, because you cannot separate the animal from the man. It's one Neshama. So when you're bringing a korban, which really means to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have to sacrifice the animal. Sacrificing the animal means destroying him, the pashtus. But sacrificing the animal means turning him around. Right? It says in Hasidus, that animals are stronger than people. Animals are physically stronger than people. They're emotionally stronger than people. And there's a simple explanation why. It says even in Hasidus. You know why animals are not smart? They're not nuanced. They're not, you could say like this and you could say like this. It's this way. So when a person's will, when an animal's will is engaged in something, there's not 5% of him who's saying Yev Shenish. There's no such thing as an animal. So because there's a single-mindedness about his ratzon, his koyach hagashmi is very single-minded. So it says in Chassidus, take the energy of an animal, which is stronger than a person, and turn it around and use it for Avodas Hashem, and with the animal you're able to do things that as a mensch, who's a servant of the Eibush, that you cannot do. This is called sacrificing the animal, burning him up and turning him around. And after you sacrifice the animal, the man, the Adam, can emerge, and the Adam you don't sacrifice, the Adam comes close. The animal has to be sacrificed, and the Adam has to come close. It's two different avodas. This is called in Chassidus, these two ideas are called in Chassidus Achilas Mizbeach and Achilas Adam. The Mizbeach eats and a person eats. The halacha is, you brought a korban chatas, yeah? A korban chatas was eaten. It wasn't burnt up on the mizbeach. But it wasn't eaten by the person who brought the korban chatas. It was eaten by the kohenim. The whole thing. The bailim got none of it. The korban chatas they put on the mizbeach, tiny little parts. The same thing like by a shlomim, more or less. Who ate the meat of the chatas? Kohenim. A korban masham, which is also a korban brought from Yom Avchet. Who ate the korban masham? The kohenim. So the lashon for Chazal is hakeyanim eichlim va'abaylim iskaprim. The kohen eats and the bala is a kaporim. So it's explained in Chassidus. The Rebbe spoke about this a number of times. That there's achilas mizbeach and achilas onim. Every korban, a little bit is eaten by the mizbeach, a little bit is eaten by an adam. Some korbanos has 3 shutfim. It's called a shlamim. The mizbeach gets a part, the kohen gets a part, and the Yisrael gets a part. Other korbanos, the mizbeach gets everything. In between those two, you have a chatas and a nosham, which is divided between the mizbeach and the kohen. The bailim get nothing. The kohen eats. So it says in Chassidus that the part that goes on the mizbeach is korban from the word sacrifice. The part that is eaten by the kohen is korban from the word to bring close. In other words, achilas adam is higher than achilas mizbeach. A human being, a boss of adam, a kohen, eats from the boss of a kochim. It's a higher inyan when the mizbeach is eating. Because the mizbeach is eating, he's destroying a behemoth. When the adam is eating, he's being makar of an adam. That's how it is. Al pi Chassidus, there's a famous line from the Rebbe, who yeshav el, who aim with len tachas ha'etz, tafshin Yud Gimmel, based on tafshin Samach Gimmel, which is based on Malta Rebbe's Maimed. There's a whole history of this. It goes from all the Rebbeim that talk about this thing. The Rebbe said the Maimed and tafshin Yud Gimmel. He gave out the Maimed. He sent out. He printed the Maimed of the Rebbe Rashab from 50 years earlier, and he spoke about it many of the sikhs before and after. The idea that achilas adam is higher than achilas mizbeach. What the kohen eats is higher than what the mizbeach eats. Now, let me give this to you in different words. I'm going to give the same thing, but in different words. If the bais hamikdash has 2 eaters, the mizbeach eats an animal, and the kohen is eating a makar of an adam. Another way to say this is the difference between the mizbeach and the menorah. The mizbeach was outside the bais hamikdash. Mizbeach was burning meat and wood. It was representing a fight between good and evil. The menorah was inside. And the fire of the menorah was very, very quiet, and the fire of the menorah was very, very peaceful. Why? Because inside the bais hamikdash there's no animal, there's just person. That's why it says in Chazal, Rashi brings it in Chumash, Shalchol gedolim mishalahem sha'ata madlik u'meitev as hanedis. The Nesiim brought Chanukas HaMizbeach, and Aaron HaKeyen lit the menorah. And Rashi says that the Eibush says to Aaron HaKeyen, don't chocha daite shalarim. Aaron felt bad that he wasn't mishtata with the Nesiim, right? Remember that at the end, the beginning of Parashat Ba'aloscha. And the Eibush tells Moshe, tell him he shouldn't feel bad. David al Aaron achicha v'amante eila ba'aloscha hanedis. Because Aaron starts with the Nesiim finish. So now let's go back to this. The Rebbe says that the bais hamikdash is tzadik gimel kelim. +1, yeah. What's the +1? What's the +1? There's many +1s. The Rebbe doesn't say that the +1 is the fire on the mizbeach. The Rebbe says that the +1 is the kohen. So you could say that the Rebbe says that the +1 is the kohen because the kohen is the 94th keli. But you could also say that the Rebbe says that the +1 is the kohen because the kohen represents a fire that's not involved in a struggle between good and evil. It's a fire that has to do with holiness alone. And this is what I'm suggesting. We're celebrating Yud bais Tammuz. And of course, it goes without saying. And this is the obvious part and the hard part. Like we get together here every day. We have shiurim, we learn. The point of all of the learning is that there should be a hazozah. There should be a change, there should be growth, there should be different after than we were before. But pe'el mamish, and in a good way, and in a way of aliyah. And that's the hard part. That's what's tricky. This is where we get stuck. You know, we could learn, we could daven, we could understand, but we have to do. And Yud bais Tammuz is a Yom Tov, is a moyed of Mesiras Nefesh. It's a moyed, really, the way, if you want to look at the Yud bais Tammuz with the most objective and open eyes, Yud bais Tammuz is the beginning of the Lubavitcher Rabbeim metamorphosing from being a Chassidus, which was elite. Chassidus Chabad for I don't know how many years was Chassidus for the greatest Jews. You had to have a great mind, and you had to have a great heart. You have to be very dedicated. Lubavitch was not a big Chassidus ever. Because Lubavitch is a hard Chassidus. You know, unser Gehenim and Zer Gan Eden, you do the word. You have to learn, and you have to daven, and you have to have iskafia. Iskafia doesn't feel good. Lubavitch was not great in numbers. Lubavitch was great in echos. Lubavitch Chassidim were Yidden who, because of their Rebbes, didn't just learn and daven. They served Hashem. And there's such a big difference between learning and davening. And so the Eibush, that mamish kerchayik mezach. And all of a sudden, Lubavitch becomes the most liberal of all the Chassidus. It becomes a Chassidus which is predicated on the principle of a haftar kamoicha, with no strings attached, with no stipulations, with no agbolas, with no requirements. Bestayid, you belong. This evolution, this radical change that took place in Lubavitch, even though you didn't see it then, starts in bais Tammuz. When the Rebbe would leave Russia, and then it would all lead to his coming to the United States of America. And as the Rebbe said in Tov Shalom Atei, 1975, the Rebbe spoke about the Friedrich was coming to America, and the Rebbe said, the Rebbe de Schwer, sie kommen in Amerika, und geworden, der Rebbe über die ganze Welt. The Rebbe de Schwer, the Friedrich came to America, he became the Rebbe of the whole world. I don't think it's such a crazy thing to say that process begins in bais Tammuz. But nevertheless, we're here to learn Torah. So I'm suggesting that in a level of a Dvar Torah, that when the Rebbe wrote 29 years ago, that the Indian of 94 is 93 Kalim plus a Kohen, he doesn't mean 93 Kalim plus another Kali. He means 93 Kalim plus a fire. But the fire is represented by the Kohen rather than the fire which was represented by the Mizbeach. Which means, amongst other things, it's a peaceful fire. The Mizbeach is a place of war. You burn meat, so the carbon wants to burn and the water doesn't want to burn. And if the fire is hot enough and you have enough fuel, the fire will dry out the meat and the only thing that will be left will be the carbon. And then eventually the carbon will burn as its nature is. But until that happens, there's a milchama. When you burn olive oil, there's no resistance. The Eibishter created shemen lahadlik. The Eibishter made oil that it should burn, and that's exactly what happens. So the Eibishter helped Mishaveh Seidus from this Yud bais Tammuz. And we should be zeichet to see the achilas kayim, the gula mitzvah shleima. Okay, this is my Farbrengen.